Welcome to the Americanish Zone. In a deeply divided political landscape, when millions of people take to the streets in protest, how should political leaders respond? Does silence from one side of the aisle indicate indifference, dismissal, or something else entirely? And in an era of intense political rhetoric, how do we distinguish between genuine grassroots dissent and politically motivated characterizations of those movements? Think about these crucial questions as we unpack a major day of protest across America. Millions of Americans took to the streets on Saturday for No Kings rallies and marches, protesting Trump administration policies. What's particularly notable, however, is the largely silent response from many Republican leaders, contrasting sharply with their previous rhetoric. On Saturday, a wave of No Kings rallies and marches unfolded across the United States. These protests, demonstrating against the Trump administration's policies, attracted millions of Americans. Many of these events, far from the hate America depiction advanced by some senior Republican members, reportedly embraced a spirit of street party, complete with marching bands, large banners referencing "We the People" from the U.S. Constitution, and even protesters donning inflatable costumes, particularly frogs, which have emerged as a unique symbol of resistance. This was the third mass mobilization since President Trump's return to the White House and occurred against the backdrop of an ongoing government shutdown, now in its 18th day. The shutdown not only affects federal programs and services, but is also testing the core balance of power in Washington, as a proactive executive branch confronts Congress and the courts in ways that protest organizers warn signify a slide toward authoritarianism. President Trump himself had commented on the protests on Friday, pushing back against the organizers' characterization of him as a would-be monarch. "They say they're referring to me as a king. I'm not a king," Trump said in a Fox News interview. Later that same day, a Trump campaign social media account appeared to mock the protests by posting a computer-generated video depicting the president clothed like a monarch, complete with a crown, waving from a balcony. At a White House event earlier last Wednesday, President Trump also tried to downplay the expected No Kings events. "I hear very few people are going to be there, by the way, but they have their day coming up and they want to have their day in the sun," he said, as he spent the weekend at his Mar-a-Lago home in Florida. In a counter-programming move, Vice President J.D. Vance and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth attended a live-fire amphibious capabilities demonstration at Camp Pendleton in California. This event commemorated the U.S. Marine Corps' 250th birthday. However, a plan to fire live artillery shells over a nearby highway drew strong objections from California Governor Gavin Newsom. Governor Newsom stated that the planned artillery fire forced the California Highway Patrol to close a portion of a major interstate through Southern California for safety reasons. The Democratic governor criticized the move, saying in a statement, "The president is putting his ego over responsibility with this disregard for public safety. Firing live rounds over a busy highway isn't just wrong, it's dangerous." Meanwhile, Vice President Vance also weighed in on X, alluding to a meeting between New York's Democratic mayoral candidate Zohran Mamdani and Siraj Wahhaj, an imam who appeared on a list of unindicted co-conspirators in the trial of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Vance wrote, "I've been reliably informed that Democrats are opposed to any kind of political violence, so I look forward to them universally." Condemning Zohran Mamdani for campaigning with an unindicted co-conspirator in a terrorist plot that killed 6 New Yorkers. Fox News, a right-leaning outlet, also ran a report claiming that organizers embedded in the global intifada to destroy the state of Israel had moved to join the No Kings protests in New York under the organizational groupings of UAW Labor for Palestine and NYC Labor for Palestine. The network also reported that foundations connected to George Soros were allegedly funding the No Kings protests via a $3 million grant to the organizer Indivisible to support the grantee's social welfare activities. The relative silence from many Republican leaders on Saturday stood in stark contrast to their efforts last week. In the days leading up to the No Kings events, Republicans had previewed them as a Hate America Day, populated by Hamas sympathizers, and even suggested it was a reason why Democrats were delaying an agreement to end the government shutdown. Republican leaders had disparaged rally-goers as communists and Marxists, claiming that centrist Democrats, including Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, who marched in New York, were being held political hostage by the far left. House Speaker Mike Johnson of Louisiana, for example, had encouraged viewers to watch, we call it the Hate America rally, that will happen Saturday. He added, "Let's see who shows up for that," listing groups he anticipated, including antifa types, people who hate capitalism, and Marxists in full display. So, we want to hear from you, our Americanish Zone viewers. What is your interpretation of the large turnout at the No Kings protests and the relatively muted response from many Republican leaders? Do you believe the pre-protest characterizations of the rallies were fair, or do they misrepresent the nature of the dissent? And how does this dynamic of protest and political response reflect the current state of American democracy? Share your thoughts and perspectives in the comments section below. Your insights are vital for a complete understanding of these national conversations. That's our in-depth report on the No Kings protests. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay informed with all our unbiased analysis. For the Americanish Zone,